What is up, everybody? Welcome to Supernatural Saturday for Saturday, June 10th. I am Praying Medic, your host. We do Supernatural Saturdays here on my Telegram channel on the second Saturday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern. And that gets it to be a little bit fun because we do time changes, time zones, and Arizona doesn't do time zone changes. So sometimes it's 11 a.m. for me, sometimes it's 10. This is going to be an interesting broadcast. I'm going to cover a lot of different subjects. For the last 4 months, I've done question and answer sessions. Last month turned out to be quite a bit of praying for people. I'm going to do a little monologue this month, and I'm going to talk about a lot of different subjects. I've been looking at the requests in the chat from yesterday. Things people wanted me to talk about, just to kind of let you know how this whole thing goes. Although I respect the requests of everyone, there are certain issues that are of only interest to only a small number of people. So someone posted in the chat yesterday a request that I discuss psoriasis and psoriatic arthritis, and that would be a broadcast that would be uninteresting to 95% of the people. They don't deal with that. They wouldn't find that very interesting. I know it's of interest to people who have that condition. So I respect the request, but number one, it's not a subject that is of interest to a lot of people. Number two, I really haven't looked into that condition, don't know much about it. Like all health conditions, conditions like psoriasis or Hashimoto's or any other illness can have one of three causes. It can either be a purely physiological or an organic condition that can be treated either pharmacologically, or it can be treated naturally with supplements and diet changes. That's one cause. Some of these illnesses have an emotional trauma root. Emotional healing helps those. And some of these issues are demonic, and deliverance is indicated. That's true with all conditions. And so I tend not to just give people kind of a one size fits all answer where you say it's always this or it's always that, because that's not true. With all health conditions, there are three possible causes. If you try one thing and it's not working, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else. That's just kind of how the healing process works. All right. There was also a request from a few people who asked me to talk a little bit about Andrew Whalen and Johnny Enlow and Mr. Miyagi. So I have known of Johnny Enlow for about 10 years. Primarily from my days in Facebook. And I am back on Facebook, by the way. My page is live on Facebook, but I'm not live streaming there today because we're going to be talking about politics, and I am not discussing politics on Facebook right now. I'm just doing spiritual issues on Facebook. Don't want to get my page taken down. Having said that, I've known Johnny for a while. I have his phone number. He has mine. We text each other occasionally, but we're just acquaintances. I don't know a lot about him personally. We've never met personally. An acquaintance, good guy. I do appreciate his revelation and his heart for teaching people about prophetic lifestyle. Andrew Whalen. I recently connected with Andrew after he started doing shows with Elijah Streams. Like Johnny, I'm an acquaintance of Andrew's. I've never met him personally. We haven't even talked to each other on the phone, just exchanged a few text messages. It is very interesting, the Mr. Miyagi connection between Andrew and me. And you can go back to one of his very first Elijah Stream interviews from a couple of months ago, where he discusses how he met this man who was a prophetic, kind of a prophetic father figure who looked like Mr. Miyagi. And he tells a story about how this guy was involved in the intelligence community, and the Great Awakening was being planned. This guy knew the plans of the Great Awakening. And then the guy passed away, and then he showed up in Andrew's dreams. And those of you who know the story, I got into Q back at the end of 2017 when I had a dream where a guy showed up who looked just like Mr. Miyagi. Showed up, started talking to me, talking like Q, and that was my intro to that. That was really the heads up from God that I need to get involved and start following Q and doing decodes. So that's the story with Andrew Whalen and Johnny Enlow. Acquaintances, but really nothing more. And the Mr. Miyagi connection is very interesting. All right. You know what? I forgot something. Hang on a minute. I'll be right back. I forgot my book. All right. So you see that? Is it shining too much? This is not a game. I published the latest Q book. It is available on Amazon. Yes, they allowed us to publish the third book in the Q Chronicles series. This is not a game. It's available on Amazon, both Kindle and in paperback. It's also available on Barnes & Noble, and long work in progress. Finally got it out. You know what? I'm going to just really quickly give you a kind of a summary. The subjects discussed in the third Q book. I'm just going to read the chapters for you. 10 Days Darkness. 10 Days Darkness is a subject that has been widely discussed on social media. There's a lot of misunderstandings about the meaning of 10 Days Darkness. In this chapter, first chapter in this book, I discuss Q's intention with the posts about 10 Days Darkness. And it's not what most people think it is. I'm just going to say that. Not going to give it away, but it's not what most people think it is. Myths and misconceptions about Q. In that chapter, I talk about a lot of the misconceptions people have about Q, particularly leaders in the church. And I kind of debunk a lot of the misconceptions. There is a chapter that decodes the signature Iron Eagle. Interesting signature by Q in that it actually has to do with Iran's illegal covert nuclear weapons program and how Q seemed to know months ahead of time that it was going to be exposed. There is a decode of the Sparrow Red stringers. That has to do with the when President Trump launched the Tomahawk missile attack on the Syrian airbase. Q seemed to know ahead of time what was going on there. There's a chapter called We Don't Say His Name about you-know-who, Senator McCain. Chapter titled This Is Not a Game. The Anatomy of a Smear Campaign is a description of how the mainstream media has smeared not just Q, but people who decode Q posts. Taking the Red Pill. Where we go one, we go all. Chapter 10 is a decode of the signature, The Hunt for Red October. Chapter 11 covers the 3 question and answer sessions that Q held, where Q talks about aliens and UFOs, what President Trump's plan is with the Federal Reserve, and a lot of other questions that are of interest to many people. Chapter 12 covers the posts where Q says, follow the pen. And chapter 13, it covers the post, follow the watch. So some watch proofs there. Chapter 14, bait expends ammunition, one of my favorite chapters. Chapter 15 is about John Durham's investigation. Chapter 16, trust the plan. And chapter 17, nothing can stop what is coming. The last chapter is kind of a brief overview of where we are now, geopolitically, and a little bit of my own thoughts about where I think this is all going. So, third Q book is up. Get it if you want. Like I said, available through Barnes & Noble, both on Nook and in paperback. It's also available on a lot of ebook outlets. You can get it on Apple Books, and like I said, it's available on Smashwords, a lot of ebook outlets, and it's also available on Amazon, at least right now. They haven't taken it down yet. And we're going to see if we can get the first 2 books republished on Amazon that may require republished him under a different title. So we'll see how that goes. All right. Wanted to do a little transition here. A lot of people are wondering my thoughts on the indictment of President Trump. So, as you know, President Trump has been indicted this week. 37 counts that came out of a grand jury in Miami. It's a 38-count indictment. One of the counts is against one of his assistants who just helped him move boxes. And so people have been, weighing in on social media what they think is going on, what the chances are that's going to be a conviction. I think that I'll just give you the short Reader's Digest version of this. I don't think that President Trump is going to be convicted on these charges for several reasons. Number one, this particular venue in Miami is not like DC. I think there's a very good chance that President Trump would get a fair and impartial jury in the Miami area. He's got a fair and impartial judge that is going to oversee the case. The charges against the president are ridiculous. And every political commentator who is, I think, looking at this from an unbiased view is saying that these charges are ridiculous. They're accusing Trump of having classified documents, having unauthorized possession of them. We're talking about a guy who was the president, who is the ultimate declassification authority. He can declassify anything he wants. He doesn't have to make an official pronouncement to declassify anything. It's a fishing expedition, and I think there's no way they're going to get conviction on these charges. Just not going to do it. But that's not the point. The point of these indictments is not to get a conviction. They don't care if they get a conviction. They didn't get a conviction in the Mueller investigation. That wasn't the point of the Mueller investigation. The point of the Mueller investigation was to create a scandal where the mainstream media could, for 2 years, smear Trump and make false allegations that he is a criminal because he's under investigation. And this is the same thing. This is nothing more than an attempt by the deep state to create a narrative where the mainstream media can talk for the next 2 years about how Trump is a criminal. He's been indicted. We're awaiting trial. There's all this, drama going on over it. And it's a smear campaign. That's all it is. Whether they get a conviction or not is irrelevant. It's not the point. They're not trying to get a conviction. They're trying to create a smear campaign. And that's what they've done. So, President Trump, he's a smart guy. He is very savvy. He's wise. He's clever. He understands what they're doing. Most of us saw this coming a long time ago. We've been warning people, look, they're going to indict him. That's the plan. And President Trump will be victorious in the end. This is only going to galvanize his base. It's going to draw more support. Some of the people who are anti-Trump are going to switch. Some people are going to wake up to the reality that Biden has thousands of classified documents that he did not have declassification authority over. Shouldn't have had them, had no authority to have them. When he was a senator, when he was vice president, people are going to see that there's a double standard of justice. Nothing for the Bidens, and Trump gets harassed all the time. People are waking up to that reality. So this is going to be a big red pill for a lot of people. Trump's the more they attack and smear Trump, the more his popularity grows, the more people wake up. So I'm not concerned about this as far as Trump goes. And just to I should say this does not, the indictment, even if he's convicted, does not stop him from running for and being elected president. The Constitution lays out 3 provisions to qualify you as to run for and be elected to the office of president. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be at least 35 years old, and you cannot have fought in the Civil War against the Union. Trump did not fight in the Civil War. He is more than 35 years old, and he's a U.S. citizen. Those are the only qualifications for president. A criminal conviction, even a felony conviction, does not disqualify him. So this isn't going to keep him from running for president. And if they decide to incarcerate him and keep him in jail, it doesn't matter. He will continue running. He'll continue getting his message out, and he'll continue fighting the deep state, and we're going to fight with him. So there, that's how I see this going. Now, I do have concerns about this, and I'm going to explain them. So the venue in Florida, I think, is a fairly safe venue, but there's a grand jury that is in DC that has also heard evidence and is likely going to bring indictments. And one commentator yesterday said that the DC indictments are probably going to drop in about a month. And then there's also a grand jury impaneled in Georgia, and they're hearing evidence, and they are probably going to bring forth some indictments. She said that those indictments will probably drop in a month later after the DC indictments. DC is not a Trump-friendly venue, and I am concerned that if Trump is going to be convicted, it's going to come out of a DC jury. He's not going to get a fair jury. He won't get a fair judge. It's going to be a kangaroo court in DC. And again, whether or not they convict him isn't really the point. This is a smear campaign. They want to continually have headlines that they can push that suggest Trump is a criminal and he is disqualified and can't be elected president. We just can't let this happen because it's unprecedented and he's, he doesn't have the moral character. It's all narrative. So I am concerned about the DC grand jury and the indictments, because that's going to add fuel to the fire. And my concern, I'll just tell you what my concern is. My concern is that this is going to lead to protests, and that could potentially lead to civil unrest. And if the deep state continues to harass and attack Trump this way, they're poking the bear. And at some point, the bear is not going to take it anymore. And I am concerned that this is going to lead to widespread protests, civil unrest. That could lead to martial law, and that could lead to a severe constitutional crisis. And those are my big concerns. So I would encourage you all to be praying about this. Denise and I pray for President Trump and his people every single day. We're praying for President Trump, praying for a peaceful resolution. We just need to keep him and his people in prayer. And I'm going to segue again to something else. So there are people on social media who take the view that all of this is just theater. It's all drama. That their view is that the deep state has been neutered, and that most of the people in the DOJ, FBI, and intelligence community who appear to be working against Trump are actually working with Trump secretly, and that this is all theater. I do not believe that theory is true. I think Chris Wray is just as duplicitous and corrupt as he appears to be. I think Merrick Garland is just as duplicitous and corrupt as he appears to be. I don't think these people are white hats. I don't think James Comey is secretly a white hat working with Trump, or any of those people. I think Bill Barr is exactly what he looks like. Trump has said it many times. Barr is a nice guy, but he's weak, ineffective, and had an opportunity to do the right thing and chose not to. I think when you listen to what Trump says about these people, you can take him exactly at face value. That's his assessment of these people is exactly what they are. So that's my perspective. You're welcome to disagree. I know a lot of people who think that this is all theater. That's fine. I disagree. I think these people really are out to get Trump, and they will stop at nothing to do it. And that's why I'm concerned that this is going to devolve into something very ugly. And that's why I'm continually encouraging people to pray for our country, pray for a peaceful resolution, a peaceful transfer of power. Maybe we get new elections with a new system, not the rigged system. And that's my request, is just have people pray into that, and let's see what happens. All right, now I'm going to transition again. What has God been speaking to me about? Well, this is where I'm going to lose a bunch of people, and that's fine. This next message is not for everyone. If it's not for you, that's fine. No harm. God has been speaking to me for the last 3 years about communications. Internet, cell phone, communications, disruptions, power grids going down, and gas prices going up, food scarcity, issues like that. I'll just say right up front, for those of you who are curious, I don't think this has anything to do with the Great Tribulation or anything that's biblical in the book of Revelation. I don't think this has anything to do with any of that. I think this is just a small time of difficulty that we're going to have to go through before we take our countries back, plural countries. We're not just going to take the United States back. We are going to take back all of our countries from all of the corrupt leaders around the world. And we're going to disempower the satanic cabal that's running the show. So what God has been showing me over the last 3 years prophetically is that a time is coming when we're going to be dealing with a different form of communications. What we're used to now, the social media platforms, the email, all of that, cell phones, is going to change. That's a hard message, because a lot of people are just locked into their lifestyle of video streaming, their phones. They can FaceTime people, they can communicate with people anytime they want, jump on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Telegram, whatever, and communicate. I believe all of that is going to change in the not too distant future. That's what God has been speaking to me about for 3 years. So from 2020 on, I've had hundreds of dreams about communications changes. I can't even count. Starting in 2020 and 2021, I started having dreams about internet disruptions, social media platforms going down, email platforms going down. One dream that I had in particular, I can just remember it, was in this dream I saw various email platforms like Hotmail and Gmail and Yahoo and Comcast Mail and all these other email platforms. And one by one, I saw these platforms going dark. They just went offline. You weren't able to email using those services anymore. And they just, one by one, they were just dropping off the internet. They weren't available. That's kind of typical of the communications disruption dreams that I've had. I've had other dreams where I saw people online trying to find certain people. There was an internet in these dreams, but it was not like the internet we have right now. It was very clunky. It was very disorganized. It was hard to find people, hard to communicate. So when I'm talking about internet disruptions, I don't think there's going to be a complete and total loss of internet. There may be for some people for a period of time, but I think in the future, we're going to have sporadic internet access. It's going to be different. It's just not going to be like it is right now. Now, what would be the cause of such a thing? I can see two different scenarios. I can see one scenario where good people in the intelligence community and the military could actually want to take offline the internet for a period of time for a benevolent purpose. And what would that purpose be? Well, I'll give you one example. The artificial intelligence transhumanist agenda is moving ahead at light speed. Microsoft, Google, and all these other artificial intelligence producing companies are just going like gangbusters, trying to be the most competitive platform for artificial intelligence. Elon Musk, to his credit, threw out the red flag and said, hey, wait a minute. This is a very dangerous move. Advancing all this AI technology without any kind of oversight, without any kind of regulation. This technology has the potential to threaten the very existence of humanity. That was Elon Musk. He said the advance of AI has the potential to threaten the existence of humanity. So I can see a situation where good people in the military intelligence community, yes, there are a few of them, could decide that they're going to stop this from advancing. They could shut down access to the internet, shut down the technology, memory hole it, and we have no access to it, and it just goes away. If you think that can't happen, it can happen. We lose technology all the time. As a world population, if you think about the technological advances that came out of the Greek and Roman empires, and then what happened, what followed the Greek and Roman empires, the Dark Ages. Why did they call it the Dark Ages? Because there was a general loss of technology. Civilization went backwards for 1,000 years. General loss of technology, and losses of technology happen. People just sort of think that the internet's always going to be around. It's always going to be the way it is. We're always going to have access to these things we have access to, and until we lose it. So I could see a scenario where good people take down at least parts of the internet. I could also see a scenario where bad people take down parts of the internet. Why does Facebook give us free access to Messenger? Why does Google give us free access to Gmail? Why does Microsoft give us free access to their mail service and all these other services? Because they collect our information, know everything about us. And by collecting our data, they can evaluate their plans to enslave us in their little digital gulag. They can scoop up all of our information, evaluate it, look at it, and see how well is their plan on track or not. And that information, those information platforms are only going to be available to us as long as they're working in their favor. As long as those information platforms are providing them a benefit, they'll make them available to us for free. As soon as we take their platform and use it against them and expose their corruption, they're going to take it away from us. That's why so many people were banned from YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter after the 2020 election. We had weaponized their platforms against them. We were exposing corruption, and they kicked us off the platform because we were not using it the way they intended to. Well, if we have a mass awakening and a critical mass of people become aware of the realities of corruption, and they're just spreading this information like wildfire on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they would shut those platforms down in a heartbeat. They would just take away access. Gmail, Hotmail, all the other services, if information is spreading that is damaging to the global communists, they will shut those platforms down so we can't spread our information. So, like I said, I can see two scenarios where either bad actors take down access to platforms or good people take down access to platforms. I don't know which one it's going to be. That's just an esoteric discussion. I'm really don't want to get too heavily into that, but I can see situations where either could happen. So God has been showing me for the last year, since May of last year, amateur radio and related subjects. I've had easily over 100 dreams in the last year just about amateur radio and subjects related to amateur radio. And I believe that God is preparing me to get me on board with and set up communications networks that will be able to function and get out a message after these current social media and email and internet platforms are no longer available. So the rest of this discussion is primarily going to focus on that. And I'm going to answer questions that I've gotten from people over the last year about this stuff. So I would just want to preface this with one admonition, and that is, what I'm about to tell you is not necessarily for you. Don't feel like compelled, like you have to go and do everything that I'm doing. That's not necessarily the case. I have access to resources, information that most people don't have access to. I was going to say that. Not everyone is able to put up an antenna for amateur radio where they can talk around the world on 20 meters. It's not practical for everyone to do that. So I'm going to describe various communications options. And I just want you to realize this is not for everybody. It is for some people. And I've received, emails and from people, asking questions, making statements, getting connections. Hey, I'm into ham radio. What's your call sign? What frequency do you transmit on? If you are interested in learning more about any of the stuff I'm going to talk about, just email me either through my website, pragmatic.com, or just send me an email, admin@pragmatic.com. Send me an email, ask your questions. I'll do what I can to answer your questions. But I'm going to give kind of a general overview of what God has shown me about alternate forms of communications over the last year. All right. So I'm going to start out with simple, basic alternate forms of communications, something that virtually everyone can do. And we're going to start out with General Mobile Radio Service, GMRS. GMRS is similar to amateur radio, but in order to operate legally on amateur radio, you have to have a license and you have to pass a test, a knowledge test. And it's not an easy test to pass. I studied for it for 2 weeks. The amateur radio first level exam, it's a 35-question written test. There's a lot of knowledge you have to have in order to pass this test. You have to look at a schematic and identify a ground, a capacitor, a resistor, and different components on a schematic. So there's some technical knowledge that you have to get licensed for amateur radio. So GMRS, General Mobile Radio Service, is a license option in the United States. It is it's a pretty simple process. You go on the FCC website, you get an FRN number, you register with the FCC, they give you what's called an FRN number. You apply for a GMRS license, you pay a $35 fee, and when you pay your $35 fee, they give you a call sign. And you can then go out and buy yourself a little mobile handheld radio and get on the channels and you can start talking to people. Now, this radio, the radios that you used for GMRS, starting out the handheld radios, they're inexpensive. You can buy them for $25. For people who want to have local communications with friends and relatives within, say, a 20-mile radius, GMRS is a good way to go. These radios, these little 5-watt, inexpensive handheld radios, transmitting in a typical suburban area are good for a few miles of range. And if you have the right kind of antenna, you can transmit up to probably 10 or 15 miles. So these come with standard, a little tiny little rubber duck antenna, about that long. Doesn't work very well. I recommend if you're going to get any kind of a handheld radio, get a longer antenna that's tuned to that radio frequency. These antennas, the longer ones, do really well for boosting your distance that you can transmit. If you use a particular kind of antenna called a Yagi, it's a directional antenna. So these antennas are omnidirectional. When you transmit, the radio frequencies go out in all directions. That's cool because if you don't know where the person is you want to talk to, you don't know where they are, your signal goes out in all directions, 360 degrees. And if someone is within range, listening distance, they can pick up your signal and respond to you. But again, these antennas will only give you a couple miles range as they are. If you get a Yagi antenna, Yagi is a directional antenna. Yagi the energy goes in one direction. So you connect a Yagi antenna to your handheld and you point it in the direction where you know somebody is. Now I've got a friend who lives about 10 miles south of me, and we both have the same radios, same gear. He's getting baptized. I'm baptizing him tomorrow, by the way. We have a little ceremony for him. We're going to take him in the pool and get him baptized. But he lives 10 miles south of me. And we communicate on these little tiny handheld radios using a Yagi antenna. So he has a Yagi and I have one on mine. We point our antennas toward each other. I point my antenna south. He points his antenna north. Just handheld antennas, ground level. And we can talk to each other with really good voice quality at 10 miles distance. No repeater, no fancy gear, just a directional antenna hooked up to a little 5-watt radio. And we haven't done a distance test yet to see, what the effective range is of those little handheld Yagi antennas, but we'll do it at some point. Point being, if you're the handheld radios are a good option for communicating to people locally. Now, continuing with the GMRS radio thing. If you happen to live in a suburban area of any size or an urban area of any size, there's a good chance someone has a GMRS repeater in your area. A repeater is a radio that is at an elevated position, usually on top of a building, on top of a water tower, or on top of a mountain. It's at an elevated position, and what it does is a repeater will pick up your radio signal and it will retransmit your signal at a higher power to people that are listening within a radius. So if you live in an area where there is a GMRS repeater that's open to the public, you can transmit on GMRS on the channel of the frequency that repeater works on. And anyone in that area who has access to, that has a radio and they can hear the repeater signal, they can pick up your signal and respond back to you through the repeater. So what does that look like? Here in the Phoenix area, we've got mountains on the east and west side of Phoenix. I was talking to a friend yesterday. He said, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Arizona's kind of flat. And so, there's probably a lot of amateur radio users out there because it's all flat out there. It's like, yeah, I used to think the same thing until I moved to Arizona. Arizona is not flat. We have mountains. The city of Phoenix is surrounded by mountains on the north, on the east, on the west, and to the south. South Mountain Range is to the south, McDowell Mountains to the east. So what they've done is put radio towers and repeaters all over the mountains around Phoenix. There is a GMRS repeater that is on a mountain called Crown King. It is 75 miles northwest of my house. And I just using this little antenna, and I turn my radio on at night, I can hear guys talking all around the Phoenix area. And I can hear guys talking up in Flagstaff, up near Sedona, Payson, and Prescott, because they've got repeaters up there. That repeater that's up by Crown King is almost at 5,000 feet of elevation. That little repeater puts out a signal that people can hear for 100 miles. And so GMRS is a potentially very useful radio platform. The radios are inexpensive. If you go on repeaterbook.com, go on the website, put in on the tab, if you live in North America, just select the North America tab, go to North America repeaters, select your state. You can also select from the menu GMRS repeaters, and it'll bring up a GMRS repeater page. Put in your zip code or the name of your city, and it'll tell you if there's any GMRS repeaters in your area. Right? It's a real easy way to do it. Just go on there, repeaterbook.com, go to the GMRS tab, put in your zip code, and see if there's repeaters, GMRS repeaters in your area. If there are, and they're open, right? If it's a closed repeater, that probably means that it's a private repeater and you have to join a club and pay a fee to have access to that repeater. If it's an open repeater, anyone, the public can use it. And if it's within 10 or 15, 20 miles, you might be able to hit that repeater with a handheld radio. And if you can hit a GMRS repeater with a handheld radio, if you can contact that repeater, you can probably talk to people within a 50-mile radius, right? That covers any of your friends, neighbors, family, whatever, in your area. If there's a repeater and if those people are willing to buy a radio. Now, the reason I said that, I have a lot of people who ask me, well, what should I do? I want to get a radio so that I can have, in an emergency so I can communicate with people. You're not the only one who has to have the radio. The other people have to have one too. You can't just get on a radio and start talking to your family members if they don't have a radio that's able to pick up the signal where they can transmit back to you. So the first thing you have to do is find out, are your friends and family willing to buy the radio and learn how to use it? If they're not, you're going to have to look at something else. Okay. I know that a lot of people are going to have anxiety over this. I get that, but do not make any purchases or preparations out of fear. Just don't do it. I get so many people who are like, I want to go on Amazon. I just want to buy some radios. Which ones should I buy? Don't buy anything. Do some research first. Find out if the people that you want to talk to are willing to purchase a radio and learn how to use it. If they're not, you're not going to be communicating with them on radio. It's that simple. I've chosen to make myself available on a number of different radio platforms, and whoever is available, whoever has the radios, whoever has the gear and has learned how to use it, I'll communicate with them. If they're not willing to buy the radio, if they're not willing to listen, then I'm not going to be communicating with them. It's that simple. I can put all the messages out on Facebook I want, but if someone's not willing to go on Facebook, they're not going to hear my message, right? So people have a choice. And before you buy anything, have a talk with your friends, family members, neighbors, whoever you want to talk to. Find out, are they interested? Are they willing to purchase equipment? Are they willing to take the training and the time and learn how to use it? If they're not, move on to something else. If they are, then say, look, maybe GMRS is a solution we could use for our neighborhood, for our family, whatever. Again, find out if they're willing. If they are, find out if there's a repeater in your area. If there's a repeater, you're set to go. Get a couple of GMRS radios, mess around with them. GMRS radios, by the way, work on UHF frequencies between 462 and 467 megahertz. It's a very narrow band, and that band is channelized. So there's channels 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4, channel 5, all the way up to channel 23. And the 8 of those channels, I think it's 15 through 23, are repeater channels. You can actually use repeaters on those frequencies on those channels. I'll say this warning, in a grid down situation where communications have gone dark, everybody and their brother is going to be on these radios. And I'll say this, those little cheap, inexpensive $15 radios that you can buy at Walmart in the blister packs. Those are called FRS, Family Radio Service. Those radios can be used, no license required, but they have very low power. They transmit, I think, on like a quarter of just a few milliwatts. The coverage for those radios is about 3 or 4 blocks. Nice for kids to talk to each other, going out hiking in the woods, going to the, whatever. Those radios are nice for kids. They're not very effective communications for a grid down situation. And those are the same frequencies that GMRS operates on. All right, so FRS, the Family Radio Service, little radios you can buy, no license. They operate on the same 23 channels or frequencies that GMRS operates on. The kicker with GMRS is you're not limited to just a 5-watt radio. You can use up to a 50-watt radio. They make mobile radios that you can put in your vehicle, and they make base radios that you can just put on a desktop. Hook that thing to an antenna, and you're putting out 50 watts of power, and you can, you can talk a long ways. Many FARs with a 50-watt radio. So that's why I said GMRS is a little bit like amateur radio, because you can use more powerful radios. Doesn't require a license, no test required. And if you're interested in learning about GMRS, check out the guy who has a YouTube channel. He's also on Rumble. His channel name is Not a Rubicon. He has a really good sense of humor. He's a good teacher, and he will give you all kinds of information about GMRS radio. He's got hundreds of videos on his channel. They're all really good. All right, I'm going to switch gears now. We're going to talk about something else. I spoke recently, I think it was on, might have been, I don't know if it was Mary Grace or Elijah Streams. I talked about Meshtastic and LoRa and T-Beam. I'm not going to talk a lot about that other than to say, for local communications within your neighborhood, with people that are, within a mile of your house, you might want to look into these LoRa T-Beam Meshtastic devices. It's a little tiny radio that puts out, again, a few milliwatts, transmits on the 900 megahertz, 915 megahertz frequency, no license required, encrypted communications. With amateur radio and GMRS, you can't, encryption is not allowed. But with LoRa, the Meshtastic devices, it pairs to your phone by Bluetooth. You send text messages from phone to phone using the little radio device as a transmitter as the propagation. And the network is encrypted and the text messages are encrypted. Like I said, good for low power, people that are close to you that you want to just communicate with in your neighborhood. Might want to look into that. All right, we're going to shift gears again. Going to talk about amateur radio. All right. Amateur radio is such a huge subject, and I can't do it adequate justice in this broadcast. But I'm going to give you an overview of what God has been showing me about amateur radio and what I've done. So amateur radio works on a number of different frequencies using a number of different kinds of devices to accomplish different purposes. So most people just think, ham radio, it's some old guy sitting around a radio, talking to some other old guy, 1,000 miles away. And that caricature is true in about 80% of the cases, probably. But there's many other uses for amateur radio. So amateur radio is actually quite advanced in technology right now. It is not the amateur radio of the 1950s, not by any stretch of the imagination. There are still a lot of people who will only talk on the lower frequencies, the ham bands, 40 meters, 20 meters, and they talk around the country and they get on their little QSOs and they talk and jabber jaw back and forth every night. and it's just a hobby for them. That is a large segment of the ham radio population. However, in the last 10 years, been major refinements, additions, and breakthroughs in the use of amateur radio. So I'm going to cover some of them. For listening and talking to people around the world, amateur radio is still the best game going outside of the internet. Right. So if we have a situation where internet goes down, where you still have power, but you don't have access to cell phones or internet, with amateur radio, you can conceivably talk to people all around the country, North America. I routinely talk to people in Georgia, Tennessee, Connecticut, Canada, South America. I do make contacts in Europe, Africa, and Asia and Australia from time to time on my radio. For if you're interested in being able to communicate with people around the world, whether or not you have internet, amateur radio is a good option. It's very dependent on atmospheric conditions, and you have to have a source of power. So the thing about amateur radio is handheld radios, for the most part, battery powered. Amateur radios that the kind that talk around the world, not battery powered for the most part. You can buy batteries to power them, but they usually have a power source that plugs into a household current, and you're just running it off your household electricity. If you lose power to your house, then you have to have a battery backup. And a lot of amateur radio operators actually have pretty comprehensive solar, generator, and other power options, battery options. I do. I've got a number of alternative power options available to power my radios and gear. So if you're talking about communications around the world, around the country, you're talking about communications on the HF bands. HF stands for high frequency. High frequency is a relative term. It's relative to low frequency. Right. So low frequency is in the band of an ultra low frequency. We're talking about 3 to 30 kilohertz, the kind of transmissions that they use for submarine communications. That's low frequency. High frequency communication is in the 3 to 30 megahertz band. Within that 3 to 30 megahertz band, and amateur radio actually allows you to operate outside of those bands, but that's the one that most of the equipment that amateur radio operators use is designed to work between 3 and 30 megahertz. Can go higher, can go lower, just depends on the kind of radio you're using. So those frequencies, there's allocations within that 3 to 30 megahertz band. There's the 3.5 megahertz band, which is called the 80 meter band, because one wavelength is 80 meters long. 7.3 megahertz is called the 40 meter band, because one wavelength is 40 meters long. Then there's the 10 megahertz band, which is 30 meters, 14 megahertz band, which is 20 meters, right? And then there's the 15 meter band, 17 and 12 and 10 meter bands. Interesting little factoid. The citizen band radio, CB radio, operates on the 11 meter band. Right between the 12 and 10 meter ham radio bands is the 11 meter citizen band radio. That's severely restricted as far as power, although a lot of CB users violate the law and have overpowered CBs. And citizen band radio is another option for off-grid communications. So here's the bad news about amateur radio in the HF spectrum, where you can talk globally. the radios themselves are expensive. They're not cheap. They start at about $500 and go up to $3,000. And first you buy the radio, you have to buy a power source, because these radios are not just plug it into the wall. They actually have a couple of, usually a black and a red wire sticking out the back, and you have to connect those to a power source. So I have a power source, a 12-volt power source that I connect my radio to, right? A 12-volt power source is another $100. And then depending on if you want a tuner or not, depending on if you want an amplifier or not, you can start buying all kinds of other gear. You need to have some coax cable. You need to have an antenna. You need to have, it's a good idea to have a device that will analyze your antenna analyzer. It'll tell you what your SWR is. Pretty soon, you're $2,000 into this ham radio project or more. So the warning that I have for people who are looking into amateur radio is, if you're looking at operating on the HF bands that can talk around the country, around the world, it can become a very expensive proposition. Not going to lie to you. It's also, there's a steep learning curve as far as learning how to put the radio, how to set it up, how to tune your antenna, how to get on the air, how to talk to people, all that. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a steep learning curve. And it's not something I would recommend for people just in emergencies. If you're not going to use amateur radio on a regular basis, don't go out and buy a radio just for emergencies. You're not going to know how to use it. You're not going to know how to hook it up. You won't have the right antenna. You could get injured because these radios put out 100 watts. And if you have an amplifier, they go up to 1,500 watts. And you can do some serious damage to people if you're not careful. So I do not recommend going out and just buying an amateur radio just for emergencies. That's not a good idea. If you're going to look into amateur radio, find a local amateur radio club. Wherever you live, there's probably an amateur radio club nearby. Contact the people in the club. Find out when they meet. Make some connections. Find someone who's willing to train you. Amateur radio guys are really good, and most of them are very eager and willing to train newbies. Someone who trains newbies is called an Elmer. So find an Elmer who's willing to train you, teach you the ropes, show you how this stuff works, and help you use it safely. I would definitely, if you're looking to get into amateur radio, find a local club, find someone who's willing to mentor you in this and get you on the air safely, and then practice it. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience. If you do not use these radios, at least on a monthly basis, you will forget how to use them. And it's not that simple, because if you're trying to, let's say you're on one of these handheld radios, and you're trying to communicate to somebody on a repeater. A lot of these repeaters on the amateur side of the radio spectrum, where you're using handheld radios, on the amateur side, most hams operate on the 2 meter and the 70 centimeter bands. And those are UHF frequencies. And they're in most suburban and urban areas, there's a lot of repeaters around that'll allow you to communicate pretty long distances on those repeaters. But the repeaters have PL tones, and they have codes that you have to program into the radio that'll open up the repeater, let your signal in, and let other people hear you. If you don't know how to program the radio and put in the codes and the PL tones, you're not going to be talking to anyone. So it's, like I said, it's a steep learning curve to get into this. It's not rocket science, okay? I don't have any technical background. I don't have an IT background. I was never interested in amateur radio until God started giving me all these dreams about radio. So just back to the dreams thing. Quick segue. God started giving me dreams about amateur radio in May of last year. And throughout the summer, it was all dreams about antennas, learning antenna configuration, learning about wavelengths, learning about the different amateur radio bands, learning about the equipment, how to put it together, how to position antenna. God was giving me dreams night after night after night after night. I was going out in my vehicle. I was going around the area, scouting out areas where I could get good radio transmissions to certain repeaters. It was crazy how many dreams God gave me about radio. And it's kind of funny because when I post these on Telegram, people are like, oh, God's telling you that we need to connect to the Holy Spirit and have a better connection to God. And I'm like, okay, yeah, well, that's fine. If I had one dream about radio and antennas, maybe I would say, oh, that's a symbolic dream. You know, God wants you to connect to the Holy Spirit. But I have had hundreds of dreams about amateur radio. And I'm sorry, but I think they're literal dreams about amateur radio. And so God's been steering me very carefully on this path to get up to speed on handheld radios, on amateur bands and GMRS, and on HF so I can talk around the world, and on Meshtastic, and on all these other things. Because for whatever reason, God wants me to have a communications network that is resilient to interference. And I will tell you this, I've had a number of dreams, including one 2 nights ago, where God suggested that my communications network is going to come under attack. So I had a dream, let's see, 7 months ago probably, where the government was trying to restrict the use of certain amateur radio bands. And I had another dream where the government was trying to locate people who are operating on certain amateur radio bands in certain areas. I had a dream 2 nights ago where that suggested that the mesh network that I'm connected to here in Phoenix is going to come under attack by some hackers. So God has been giving me a lot of instruction on amateur radio and communications networks. It's kind of bizarre for me. Denise and I, when I wake up in the morning and Denise is like, do I want to ask you if you had a dream? I'm like, another ham radio dream. She's like, oh gosh, okay. How much more gear are you going to have to buy? Fortunately, I think I'm done buying gear. So let's talk about mesh networks. The amateur radio experience is not limited to just talking on a radio to somebody who's, across town, across state, or across the country. It's actually a much more colorful experience. I think in August or September of last year, the Lord started giving me dreams about mesh networks. And I was like, what is that? I had to go do an internet search and find out what mesh network was about. And lo and behold, I ran into this thing called the ARDN mesh network, AREDN, Amateur Radio Emergency Digital Network, I think is what it means. ARDN, AREDN. ARDN is it's a software that has been developed by amateur radio users. And what it does is create networks of nodes in a local area using networking and Wi-Fi equipment and cellular network equipment. It repurposes it for ham radio. So we're talking about using little router boards and cellular type antennas and dish antennas to connect to each other and create a mesh network. The idea of mesh networking is if you have a couple of people who are communicating to each other via internet or via radio, and a third person connects to one of those people and a fourth person connects to one of those people, and they're all using the same software and they create a network, you can share all the information and communicate by email and whatever other modes you want. And as you add more users to the network grows. It also provides, it expands the network geographically and more people can connect. So let me explain one of the things. All right, this is an antenna. It is a MikroTik antenna. It's a 5G dish antenna. Inside of here, there's a little computer, a board, a router board. This device has a router, modem, radio, and antenna all built into one device. Okay, it is an antenna. It's a dish antenna. It has a radio transmitter and a router and modem in it that connects to. It creates a wireless connection and a radio connection. Using this, I can plug this thing into my computer using an Ethernet cable. I plug the Ethernet cable into my computer. My computer has a program on it, the Arden programming, and I can then point this antenna at a certain node located however far away, 10 miles, 15, 20 miles away, connect to that node, and I can then send email. I can communicate with people on a bulletin board service. This networking has the capability of doing video conferencing like Zoom. I didn't know that until about a week ago. So I was talking to a friend of mine. He holds a workshop here in the Phoenix area. I've been to two of the mesh workshops, and after I got my node, my antenna connected to his node. He lives up on the mountain. I connect to him because he is up right below this mountain pass, and I have good line of sight to his home, and he's got a freaking big antenna on the roof of his house with a bunch of antennas on there, and I could connect to one of his antennas, and I connected to his node, and I got connected to the entire Phoenix mesh network. So we were talking the other night at his place, and he said, "Hey, I want to show you something." And he pulled up his node, and he pulled up a thing called Team Talk. And he said, "So check this out. This is Team Talk, and this is in every way, it's just like Zoom, except it's powered by radio." So because it does full video conferencing, audio conferencing. You can turn the video on, turn the video off. You can just do voice conferencing, calling back and forth with a group of people. It does file transfers. It does chat, instant messaging chat. Like I said, there's bulletin board services on this network. Just about anything that you can do on the internet, you can do on mesh networking. And here's a kicker. So I've got my node connected right now, and I've been checking the signal strength on a regular basis. Every morning I get up, check my signal. This morning, I have my connection to the network using a dish antenna to a dish antenna that's 10 miles away. My data transfer rate right now is 60 megabits per second. That is blazing fast internet speed. You can stream high quality 4K video over a 60 megabit connection, right? And we're talking about a connection that is over radio, right? Live streaming high quality video. That's the kind of data throughput that this network has. And so God's been, ever since last August, God has been giving me dreams about this mesh networking thing, about getting connected, setting it up, getting on board. And I didn't really know what the deal was. Like, okay, great, we can send email, there's a bulletin board service. Like, what's the big deal with this? Then I found out that you can do video conferencing. I was like, you got to be kidding me. Yep, it's just like Zoom. And it is completely off-grid. A lot of the guys who have nodes in the Phoenix area power theirs with solar. It's backup solar power or generator power. So it's impervious to grid down situation. If the power grid goes down, internet goes down, cell phone goes down, the ham radio guys in the Phoenix area that are connected on the mesh network, they will be talking to each other and communicating, video conferencing, everything else, as long as their power holds out. So I'm just kind of like, I'm following the Lord, following the trail, following the breadcrumbs. Each day, the Lord is giving me more information, more breadcrumbs, more direction about where He wants me to go with this communication stuff. So let me answer a couple of questions I know that people are going to ask. Right now, I am not able to broadcast on a particular frequency, on a particular network on a regular basis. If you're trying to find me on 20 meters, or whatever ham band, I'm not regularly broadcasting. That's not really how amateur radio works. There are what are called nets on amateur radio, where on a daily or weekly basis, an organization will sponsor 15 or 20 minute or half hour or 1 hour net. A net is a regularly scheduled on-air meeting where really anyone can jump in and talk to and listen to and receive instruction from people about amateur radio subjects. Most of the ham clubs around the country have like a weekly net where they get on the air at a certain time. The members get on, they have their radios, they talk, they have announcements, they might do some education. Right. Those are nets. There's a net controller who sort of runs the net. But amateur radio is not really designed for one way, one person broadcasting a message to a wide audience. With amateur radio, the model is it's a two-way communication. I talk to you, you talk to me, or we talk as a group. It's not designed as a one-way broadcast medium. That's just not what it's designed for. So for me to get on the air and do a 20-minute monologue on amateur radio, it's not cool. That's not what it's designed for. So if you're looking for that kind of a situation, it's not going to happen. I do regularly participate in some of the nets in the Phoenix area on radio, but I'm not there giving a 20-minute speech about what's going on, a news update. It's not what I do. I can't do that on amateur radio. Now, if people in the Phoenix area get connected on the Arden network and we want to do Zoom conferencing and do video calling where I can do, a message on a daily or weekly basis, that's something altogether different. You actually can do, and that's what that is designed to do. So I'm not going to lie to you about the Arden mesh thing. It is a steep learning curve. I had a full head of hair before I started getting into mesh networking, and I've just been pulling it out in handfuls every day. Mesh networking is not for the faint of heart. Most of the people who do it have an IT background because you're dealing with routers and servers and all this other crap that can be quite technical. However, having said that, there's a way to make the learning curve shorter. What I said is true. If you're able, or if you know someone who's able to take an antenna like this, and there's different versions of these antennas. Some of them are smaller, some of them are less expensive. This one isn't too expensive, it's about $80. You can get some of these antennas that are smaller. They're $40, $50 on Amazon. If you can take one of these antennas and get the software flashed onto this antenna and download the program on your computer and connect the antenna to your computer and put this thing on a tripod and point it at some other place that has a similar dish or network or antenna, and you can connect to them, you can have a communications network. There are people in remote areas in Arizona where people are communicating and talking about putting up their own local mesh network. Up in Show Low, I'm talking to a guy up there. He's an electrical contractor, and he knows a lot about this stuff. and he and a couple of his friends are looking at putting up some nodes. And the thing about this particular networking is it is a very, very high frequency. We're talking most of these dishes work off either 2, 3, or 5G. 5 gigahertz, 3 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz. It's a very high frequency, and it's very susceptible to interruption. The radio signal will not go through a tree. so with the lower frequency ham bands, like 10 meters, 20 meters, 40 meters, very long wavelength, and it'll penetrate through buildings, through trees, through the forest. Those frequencies will just go and go and go. They have a lot of power. That's the HF band. The UHF band, especially the higher you get up into 2, 3, and 5G, those frequencies do not penetrate much. You have to have good, clear line of sight to get these antennas to talk to each other. You have any interruptions, you have a tree in the way, you're not going to have a good connection. I've got a guy that lives about 7 miles north of me, and he's got a tree on the south edge of his property, and he would be able to point his antenna right at me and connect with me, except there's a tree right at the south edge of his property. It's between us. And the radio signal won't reliably go through that tree. Every once in a while, I'll make a connection with him for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then boom, the wind will blow and the foliage on the tree will move out of the way. I'll get a connection. Wind will blow back the other way, and the tree will be back in the way again, and I won't be able to get a connection. So the downside to the mesh networking with these high frequency devices is that you have to have clear line of sight. And in the Phoenix area, that is actually possible because of the mountains, right? Like you can go almost anywhere in the Phoenix area and see the White Tank Mountains. You can see the Scottsdale, mountains. You can see the mountain, South Mountain, and that's where the radio towers are. So the availability of line of sight because of the mountains makes the Phoenix area a really good option for mesh networking. If you live in an area that's relatively flat, it's a lot harder, because then you're talking about putting your antenna up on a tower or a pole on your roof and trying to make a connection to somebody, 5, 10 miles away. They also have to put their antenna up and get it elevated so you have good line of sight. If you live in a mountainous area, especially live in a valley, and there's antennas and nodes up on the mountains, you're golden. Pretty easy to do. So I guess that's kind of a wrap on the amateur network stuff, or amateur radio. It is a very, very deep, very complex subject. I'm not the only one who's getting revelation about making preparations for communications disruptions. I have a lot of friends who are getting dreams daily about communications disruptions. Not a lot of big name prophets are talking about that kind of stuff. That's fine. I don't really care. This is my assignment. This is the revelation that God's been giving me over the last 3 years. And I got to go with what the Holy Spirit has given me. And the Holy Spirit has got me pretty hard on the trail of getting up to speed and getting operational on amateur radio. By the way, if you are on amateur radio and you're doing, JS8 call, WinLink, and all the digital modes, WSJTX, I have been operating on that stuff. I was on WinLink yesterday, and I was on Vara Chat. I really love Vara Chat. It's a very good program. A lot of the digital modes, if you're out there, you can look up my call sign, KK7GSS. And if you find me on the air on any of the digital modes, just hit me up and we'll have a QSO. And for most of you, that means nothing, and that's okay. All right, so that's gonna be a wrap for today's show. Like I said, if you have any questions, comments, I want more information, send me an email. Go to my website, prayingmedic.com, hit the contact page, and you can email me or just send me an email at admin@prayingmedic.com. I do have another website, prayingmedic.org. That is our ministry website. If you need healing, there's a whole bunch of videos on there. If you click the tab for healing, it'll pull up 6 different videos that I've done for healing on different subjects. Just listen to the video. We've been getting testimonies every day of people who have been healed, either through me praying for them or listening to the videos. A lot of people are getting healed praying for themselves. That's actually the goal. My goal is to teach people how to become prayer warriors who can release the power and authority that God has given us to heal ourselves and other people. If you have a prayer request, send it to me. If you have comments about radio, send it to me. Questions about prepping, send it to me. I'll see what I can do to answer your questions. I don't have all the answers, but I might be able to point you in the right direction. And if you want to support our ministry, our nonprofit ministry, we have a Give, Send, Go page. It's givesendgo.com/PM. Tax-deductible donations are accepted and greatly appreciated. All right, I'm going to get out of this broadcast. I think I've been talking long enough today. Thank you for joining me. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about on next month's broadcast, but I would encourage you all to listen to the Holy Spirit, ask for revelation about what you should be preparing for, right? God's given me revelation about what I need to prepare for. You should be asking the Lord, what should you be preparing for? He'll give you specific revelation. Some people are being prepared, storing up food, solar generators, all that. Other people, God's not telling them to prepare for stuff. So don't do something just because someone else is doing it. Ask for specific revelation from God about what you're supposed to be doing. President Trump is going to be speaking in South Carolina this afternoon. There'll be a live stream available for that. I would encourage you to watch. And, we need to keep President Trump in prayer and his people in prayer over the next few months. It's going to get difficult for him, but God is on the throne. God has a plan. This corrupt, evil cabal is coming down. The global communist regime is coming down. God's going to destroy it all. And we have a lot of reasons to be optimistic. I think it's going to be a little bit difficult in the coming 6 months to a year. But on the other side of that, on the other side of the storm, it's going to be glorious. We're going to have the greatest awakening, spiritual awakening in the history of mankind. All right, that's it. Love you all. Take care. I will catch you next month on Supernatural Saturday.